You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about Propagandhi. Well, that feels weird to say that because I'm not Keith. Keith always says that. But hi everyone, Greg here. On this episode, I am bursting with joy to bring you a conversation with David Guillas, former guitarist of Propagandhi on supporting cast and failed states, former guitarist of Winnipeg's Giant Sons, current guitarist in Winnipeg's Agassiz, and he's also a teacher, a parent, and now a guitar builder for his recently monikered Strange Earth Guitars, which you can follow on Instagram for all of the things that we are about to discuss on this episode. So on this episode, I asked David just about everything I could think of with regards to what it is like to learn how to build guitars. We talked about each of his builds. We talked about his use of personally built guitars on the latest Agassiz EP, Pulse 1C. We talked about his the collection of tools that he uses for building guitars. We talked about his work process. And we talked about building a guitar for our favorite friend, Chris Hanna. So if you haven't really listened to Agassiz yet, will you just do it already? Seriously, will you just put on a pair of decent headphones, turn it up, and just listen to Agassiz? Just do it. I can't stop. I've been listening to Agassiz all day today, and I am so excited about this particular bonus episode of Unscripted Moments, a podcast about Propagandhi. So I'm just going to dive right into it. So without further delay, here is my conversation with David Guillas, where we do a deep dive on Strange Earth guitars and everything that I could think of. This is just, I'm so excited. So here we go, everybody. Please enjoy this conversation. David Guillas, welcome back to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about Propagandhi.
Hey, glad to be back.
Well, this is your fourth time. I think that you might now be our most recurring guest on this show, which is quite a delight for me, obviously. But I'm really glad that you were willing to come on here and chat with me because we're only going to talk about guitars today. And this is going to be something that's really exciting for me, very outside my wheelhouse. And I'm just super grateful to you for being interested in doing such a niche conversation like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. Like it is niche. Hopefully there's a few people out there that might be interested in it, but I'm always stoked to just talk about guitars.
Absolutely. Well, David, I want to start off by asking about Strange Earth guitars. So you've been building guitars. You have this new moniker, Strange Earth Guitars, and I'm wondering how you landed on the name Strange Earth for your guitar building endeavors.
Yeah, I'd been building for a while. Oh, actually, not that long. I've only been building 2.5 years, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I always just kind of had the idea of, keep my eyes and ears open for a name that I might want to use one day. Was never in a real rush to find one. And I just been doing a lot of reading. Books like Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. I was rereading Sacred Balance by David Suzuki. Other books, there's this book, The Hidden Life of Trees. Anyway, it's just a lot of stuff about life and the wonders and the mysteries of life. And it just kind of came upon me that way, this idea of strange earth. And for me anyways, it just is about it's just the wonderful mysteries of living and of life. That I realize that sounds corny possibly, but it means something to me, and that's all I was looking for in a name. It's just something that meant something, and it's kind of about how I try to do things as a builder, try to respect the living world in my process.
Mm-hmm. What that speaks to me, though, is about just you as a curious person, somebody who continues to want to learn new things throughout the duration of your life instead of, stagnating into an uncurious mindset, which so many people our age tend to do, where you wake up and you crush yourself at work all day and then you watch TV all night until you fall asleep. So I see Strange Earth almost as like an homage to curiosity and, building new skills for all of life instead of just being curious when you're young and then being uncurious when you're older. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense to you?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of neat that you picked up on that too. Certainly. Yeah. And as a teacher, I really try my best to model that for my students. I teach mostly grade 5, 6. And part of the way I do that is with my Instagram. I'm not very good at posting, but part of that, my motivation to share on Instagram is as a way to share with my students, and I'll bring it up in class and like, look what I've been up to.
Nice.
And, as a way, selfishly it's fun to talk about, but it's also a way to share my curiosities with kids, because I feel like that can be an inspiration. Hopefully.
And teachers with young hearts, tend to be the ones that the young people are more drawn to, because they just see that childlike curiosity coming out within us. And I think that inspires them to be like, wow, that's what I can be like whenever I'm older too. Like I can continue to love the world, love people, love life, and remain happy and curious and exploratory forever. I don't have to fall into some, adult trap. You know what I mean?
Oh man, that's it. You nailed it. We're maybe veering off into the world of education, but I say this all the time. Children have a wisdom about them that is not recognized by adults who are stuck in their ways and have maybe lost their sense of wonder and curiosity. So in that sense, I'm with you. Kids have that natural curiosity, and why do we have to lose that?
I love it. Well, yeah. I love your logo as well, that you sort of like, it looks like you burn those logos into the headstocks of the guitars that you build. I'm wondering about the origin of the logo. Who did the design? How did that come about?
That was me. I spent a long time. Usually I'd just be sitting with my daughter, who's 6, and we doodle together. And she was kind of on this mission with me to try to come up with some kind of a logo. She came up with some really cool stuff. I might I don't know what I might use them for someday, but really weird, cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of different ideas that I would show with some friends and give some feedback. And most of them were no good. And then I just kind of came upon this sort of DNA, stylized S and an E. And for me, it just kind of spoke to me. It's like, there it is. DNA is the common denominator of all life on this planet. The great diversity of life, yet we all come down to this twisty molecule, right?
Oh my God.
So that's kind of how I got to that.
I love it. Did you design because it looks like I saw you burn them into the headstocks. Did you have to come up with a little what is that does that? Do you just draw it in? Or do you actually have a stamp that you had made?
Yeah, it's a branding iron. So I had I drew my little doodle on a piece of paper, and Derek Hogue, I'm in Agassiz with. He's very savvy with technology and graphics and things like that. And so I sent him just a cell phone picture of it, and he produced it into I forget what kind of file it is. That this company required to make a branding iron out of. So I sent this company, and it was $150 or something like that. So it wasn't too bad.
Totally worth it.
Yeah, you just heat it up and you brand it, and there you go.
Unbelievable. Okay. So I'm so far out over my skis here. I want to know the origin story now of the moment you realized you wanted to build a guitar. Tell me about that, because you've been playing forever. Everybody who listens to this podcast has heard your work so much by this point. Tell me about wanting to build.
That is a kind of a long drawn out story. I can maybe try to summarize.
Sure.
I remember when I got my first nice guitar. It was my Gibson SG, which I still have. I got it when I was 18 or 17. And I used to just sit it there and stare at it. I was just so in awe of the wood and how beautiful it was. And I just was I wondered, how do they make that? Fast forward many years, and that guitar suffered a bit of damage. The neck just became unplayable. It would not stay in tune. So I have a luthier friend here in Winnipeg. His name's Darcy Bunio. Awesome builder. He suggested we just tear out the neck and put in a new neck. And so we worked on some ideas together, and he built a new neck for that guitar. Mm-hmm. And I would go visit his workshop, and that was, I think, the impetus of oh man, there's magic happening here. I want to know how he does it. I want to know how he builds these things. I didn't actually stick around and watch, because I don't think if he's anything like me, the last thing he wants is someone watching him. But I was just curious. So from that point on, I got really interested in learning how to set up my own guitar really well.
Yeah.
From there, I assembled a Stratocaster style guitar from just parts. And fast forward again a number of years, and I was going to get Darcy to build me a guitar a few years ago. and we met a few times, and it didn't work out. I just wanted a clone of my SG.
Mm-hmm.
And as a builder, he's like, well, I'm not really interested in just building a clone. I totally understand that now more than ever. Like, that's so uninteresting to a builder. And so I just thought, you know what? Instead of putting the money into this new guitar, why don't I just put money into getting the few tools that I need? Because I already had a few. I've been into woodworking for a while, and build my own guitar. And I should say, for a number of years, I'd also stumbled upon various YouTube videos. There's a number of builders that have channels on YouTube, and I just would watch those for entertainment. And what I didn't realize is all those years of watching those builders, I was really actually front loading information. And so when the time came for me to start building, I already had a lot of this knowledge kind of front loaded in me. I didn't have any experience, which is, I mean, probably more important than the knowledge. So I just thought, you know, I'm going to go for it. And that's what I did. I was fully prepared for a guitar that did not work, and it might be a total bust. And I was actually expecting that. But it didn't. It was a guitar that it turned out just fine. It works. In hindsight, there's a number of things on it that I'm just like, oh my God, what was I thinking? You know, I've grown and improved since then, but my first guitar was a success, and that's kind of kept me rolling.
Was that first guitar that you built? I'm looking at your Instagram right now. And is that the SG style that's sitting next to your other SG in the picture?
That's the one. Yeah. So it's made out of black walnut.
Okay.
And so it was really useful to build essentially a clone of that guitar, of that SG, which had the new neck that Darcy put on.
I can see that.
24 fret. So I was almost able to like use that as a reference. I constantly would check, okay, what did Darcy do here? And so Darcy didn't know this, but he was kind of indirectly like mentoring me a little bit, because I was just like checking out the different decisions he made on his neck.
Nice.
And it helped me. That I don't think I would have succeeded had I not had that reference.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Did Darcy give you any recommendations like on like what to research in order to like undertake a first build? Like, I'm wondering what you were reading, watching, trying out, etc. That like that it led up to your first attempt. Like, did you just go into this blind, or did you like obsessively like go down some like YouTube and book rabbit holes first?
Well, like I had said, I'd already been down a number of YouTube rabbit holes, watching various builders, but I also acquired some books. One's by Martin Koch. It's like about building an electric guitar. And there's another one, I forget the name of it, but there's a couple of really quite decent books that kind of walk you through the steps.
Sweet.
And between the YouTube and the books and me just going for it, trial and error, I succeeded. I should mention my first build, I think it took 3 attempts on a neck before I didn't wreck it, which means, so I have, I know your viewers can't see,
but show me, let me see.
Here's my first attempt at a neck. I've got it in my pile, my burn pile. I don't know why I'm saving this, but I wrecked it. I forget what I did to wreck it, but it's wrecked. And I've since used it to just test some holes and I drilled things in it. But
I mean, isn't that kind of a cool artifact though, to like, you know, as a reminder, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's all about, I think the biggest and most important way to learn in anything is those mistakes. And you know, and when they happen, you know, first you're going to grieve and you're going to get frustrated and upset and who knows what else, because it's, especially if you put a lot of work into something and then you realize, oh, I wrecked it.
Yeah.
But as soon as you get over that and just try to learn from it, okay, what did I do wrong? What do I need to do different next time? And then over the years, I heard some luthier, I forget his name, said, you know, what defines a master luthier is that they've made all of the mistakes that there are to make, and they know how to avoid those mistakes in the future.
Yeah, so they can see like 5 moves ahead on the build. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
love it.
And even still, you know, I make way less mistakes, but I recently I made a pretty crucial mistake on this build I'm working on now, and it's such a silly little mistake. I kind of got complacent. You know, it's a mistake I hadn't made in ages, and I just went for. What I was doing is I was beveling the frets along the side of the fretboard.
Yeah.
What I did is I beveled the angle too much, and by doing so, you have less real estate for your strings for you to play and push on down on the frets. And it's such a stupid mistake, and I made it just the other day. And I've been spending the last few days just feeling miserable about it. But now I'm at the state now, like, okay, it's happened. You can't undo that. And I'm going to basically have to take the frets out, which is a huge job, and do it over again.
Is that the most recent video that you posted of you putting the frets in?
No, I put the frets in. I'm doing 2 different builds right now. I put the frets in this one. And this one's, this neck is so far so good.
Nice.
The other one I did more recently, I put the frets in. And then I was beveling the angle along the side, and I went too far.
Ah, damn.
And that's what it is. Usually
that
those
neck looks,
happen.
It looks so good. That neck looks so good just right now, right there. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what I'm curious about is, what is your tool inventory like in order to do these builds? You know, I'd imagine that you had to, you know, acquire a lot of items, make some trips to the store, order some stuff all along the way. What have you found to be necessary to make the process as smooth as possible as far as tools go?
I definitely prefer using hand tools whenever possible. That said, I'm not a purist about that. And like, for example, I have a handheld plunge router. It's very noisy, very dangerous power tool, but I find it, I use it all the time. It really makes a lot of jobs. For example, like I use it to route out the outline. If I use a template, I can use that template to route out my body shape in a way where I'm left with a fairly smooth contour around the shape of the body, which could be done with power tool or with hand tools, but it would just be a really tedious job. So that's a really invaluable tool. I use hand planes a lot. There's one behind me here. I use hand planes, various sizes to flatten surfaces or square some of the like the neck blanks and different things like that. I started with a pretty meager assortment of tools. I mean, I started out with, my dad had this old Craftsman plunge router from, actually it wasn't even a plunge router, it was just a router from like the 70s probably. And that lasted me about halfway through my first build, and then it just stopped working. And so I decided, well, this is something I'm definitely using a lot. I'm going to go buy one. And bit by bit, I've kind of acquired a few more tools here and there. I have a drill press, fairly inexpensive drill press, which is really a useful tool to have. A spindle sander is a really useful tool to have, which I bought about a year ago. But I have a pretty small space. I'm in sort of a corner of my basement. You know, I'm being very mindful not to fill it unnecessarily. So I would love to have a bandsaw. That would make my life so much easier in many different ways, but those things are huge, very noisy. I've insulated the ceiling in my basement for like sound insulation, but my family can still hear everything I'm doing down here. And I only work in the evenings when my daughter's in bed, so I work for a few hours every evening. So I have to be mindful of how much noise I'm making.
I love it. I love it. So do you have any like little electronics things like that? Have you worked on like soldering irons or like putting together any like wiring? Like, what are you doing as far as that kind of stuff goes, tools wise?
Yeah, I've got a soldering iron I got a long time ago. You know, back when I was just kind of getting interested in learning how to set up my own guitar 10 or 12 years ago, I was installing my own pickups, and I actually built a few pedals from kits. So I taught myself how to solder just by making pedals and installing pickups. So I have, that. I mean, electronics is not my forte. And in fact, I should have caveated all of this by saying, I'm very much a student in this. And I love to talk about, what I know and what I've in my process, but let it be known, I am no luthier. I am no expert. And I'm very much on a learning journey. I'm at the beginning of it.
I love it. Do you have any habits that you get into as far as like getting yourself in the mindset or the focus in order to have a successful couple of hours of work? Like, is there anything you do to set the atmosphere to get you in the zone?
No, I should, because if I did do something like that, that mistake I was just referring to, where I over beveled my frets, that probably wouldn't have happened if I had spent a few minutes just trying to like center myself and get,
Yeah.
focus. I think sometimes I tend to rush, and so that's probably something I should look into. Just before I do anything, just take a breath, think about what needs to get done, and don't rush into it, because that's how mistakes happen.
Do you work in silence, or do you listen to music or anything while you're working?
I used to love working in silence, just because the sound that the wood makes when your tools interact with the wood, it gives you a lot of information about what's happening. But lately I find myself listening to quite a bit of music. It comes and goes. Yeah, it comes and goes.
What are you listening to lately? Just as a side tangent.
I'm so bored with music lately, at least just my own, what I tend to gravitate towards.
Yeah.
So just anything goes. Every once in a while I'll text out my friends, like, what are you listening to? Tell me what I need to be listening to, because I'm so bored.
Mm-hmm. I get it.
Yeah.
Something I really enjoy about watching you online do this work over the last couple of years is your approach and focus on reclaimed woods. And on your Instagram, you talked a little bit about making as little of a dent in this world as you possibly can, which I think is an awesome justification for the reclaimed wood approach. But I'm curious about, before we discuss your specific builds, I want to know about your decision about reclaimed woods and just talk a little bit about that. And I may have a couple follow-up questions.
Yeah. I guess it's about, I just going back to how I settled on Strange Earth and the DNA style logo. I just life is so precious, and I just really love trees.
Mm-hmm.
Lately, especially, the more I pay attention to trees, the more I learn about trees, the more mysterious they are. Like what an amazing creature
Yes.
trees are. And I just really respect trees as a fellow life form. And so I'm no purist about using reclaimed wood, or I guess I haven't really used much reclaimed wood. It's more salvaged wood.
Okay.
So for example, in my fifth build, the 7-string, that body is salvaged ash, because as you may know, ash trees in North America are dying.
Yeah.
They're being because of this invasive beetle called the emerald ash borer.
Mm-hmm.
And so in Winnipeg, ash trees are just being cut down everywhere. And usually they just get turned into mulch.
Yeah.
But there's a company locally that's salvaging some of these trees and milling them and then selling them as lumber. So that's where I got that. And one of the builds I'm working on now is salvaged elm. I've got this old bookshelf that my partner Mandy brought home from work. It might be 100 years old. We don't know. But it's made out of oak. So I've used that as a pick guard on, I think it's my third build.
Nice.
And so, and I've lately, whenever I see a fallen tree, or recently I came across a whole bunch of trees that were cut down along the creek near my house. I just bring those logs home and I seal the ends. So I just paint them basically. And I try to cut them in half, but that is extremely labor intensive.
Yeah.
Which I don't mind. I feel like this tree spent the last 60 years growing. If I'm going to use it for something, it's not a hardship for me to spend a couple hours sawing through this thing by hand. I almost owe it to the tree in a way,
Yeah.
And so I've got those. I've got a bunch of those, Manitoba maple, and also a couple of elm stumps drying. This is a long-term experiment. I've never done this. If they end up being usable wood, it'll take 5 years or more.
Wow.
And it may not work at all. It's just an experiment. I'm just playing. So.
Nice. So you seem to be getting these from a variety of sources, right? I mean, this seems to be just pretty much all local, though. Is that right?
The reclaimed stuff, yes. I still use. I mean, I buy wood, especially for the necks. Use for building a neck, because that in particular is where you want to have stiff, strong, uncompromised wood. Mm-hmm. Which is possible certainly with reclaimed and salvaged wood. But so far, the wood I use for my necks comes from either a local lumber yard, or there's a sort of a luthier supply, a wood supply, tone wood supply place in BC, in British Columbia, that I sometimes buy from.
So the body and the headstock seem to be the parts that are more salvaged. Is that right?
The body, or sometimes the headstock veneer. So like
Okay.
a thin layer of wood on top of the headstock. The headstock is attached to the neck.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
How do you know if like a piece of wood is a good candidate for a build? Is there any kind of quality that you're specifically looking for in order to be like, that's the one?
Lately, I've been trying to learn how to, it's called, you can find the tap tone of a particular piece of wood. I'm so new at this, and I'm just playing with it.
Sure.
Where basically you take a piece of wood and you hold it in a particular way and you tap on it, and it gives it rings. It gives a certain tone, and it's a good way to check and see how it might contribute to the sustain of a guitar. So
Yeah.
how long the guitar note might last, and it also might give you hints as to how it might respond to the vibrating strings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very new at this, but I've been just kind of experimenting with that and noticing the difference between a black locust fretboard and what that sounds like, which is beautiful, compared to like a maple fretboard, which will sound a bit more bright and have less sustain, in my limited experience anyway.
Nice. Well,
that's part of it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm looking at the 7-string headstock right now, a picture of it, and it looks like just above the like at the very bottom of the headstock, there looks to be like a knot or like an imperfection in the wood. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that isn't actually an imperfection, but like, I've noticed that several of the guitars you've made seem to have this sort of mark on the headstock. I saw some blocks of wood where you draw the headstocks on, and right at the bottom of the headstock on all 3 of these headstocks that you had drawn outlines of was the same knot or imperfection. And I'm wondering about your approach to that, because I'm wondering, does this make the guitar have less integrity in the headstock, or like, because surely you must have researched this before you went through with these. And I'm curious about that because I see this as being like a recurring sort of stamp on your work, and it's really fascinating.
Yeah, I love using the imperfections of the wood. I love kind of like, instead of having a set design, you kind of just listen to the wood. But anyway, that headstock idea, I got that from Darcy Bunio, the
Cool.
series. I noticed in one of his builds, he said he found this piece of wood in a friend's firewood pile.
Okay.
And he took it home. And so, actually, if you hold on a sec, I'll
get it.
It's easy for me to talk about something when it's in my hands and I'm looking at it. So.
Yeah, totally.
So basically, like, so here's one I'm building right now.
Okay.
This is the one, by the way, that I made that crucial error. So I'm going to have to take these frets out.
Gotcha.
But anyways, I'll recover.
Yeah.
This headstock has that. It's basically like a bark incursion. So it's like where there's been bark and the left kind of a bit of a hole. But this isn't the full headstock. The headstock is under here. It's maple.
Oh.
And this particular example, and it's connected to the whole neck.
Yeah.
And so the veneer is like a thin piece of wood I glue on top, which actually does add a little bit of strength up there. And it doesn't make a difference structurally to have this little opening there. And you need that opening because that's where you adjust the truss rod for your neck.
Oh my God.
I love the idea of using just the bark, the natural bark that was on this piece of wood. And I drew it very carefully so that I could maximize the way I use that natural opening.
Can you keep that held up for a second? Can I do a screenshot?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a second. I just want to take a picture of us here because this is really cool. Smile. Awesome. Cool. That's freaking sweet. I just wanted to make sure that I could, like, if people are like, what are you talking about? I want to be able to see, show everybody that we can show that. That's really cool. Okay. So something else I want to know about is frets. I know that I've read a bunch of your comments on on your Instagram. Like, you're really good about replying to people's questions whenever they have them. And somebody mentioned fanned frets. And then you also mentioned somewhere else that laying frets has a very steep learning curve. And I want to know about how you've learned how to lay frets, and then what fanned frets means, because that's a term I don't know.
So I learned it's a trial and error. You learn by making mistakes. So the first guitar I made, so I had just seen videos, and of course I'm watching these master luthiers using a handsaw. It's right here, actually. Using a handsaw and just by hand, just sawing in these perfect slots where you later hammer in the frets. the frets. Here's a fret.
Nice.
At the bottom they have like a tang, it's called, and they're kind of grooves. So when you hammer that in, the grooves catch in the wood, and that's what holds it in.
Cool.
So anyways, watching these master luthiers making it look so easy with the handsaw, I proceeded and did what I saw. But when I did it, and it's funny, actually, I recorded myself a video on Instagram where I'm actually sawing in the fret slots, and you can see my hand is just wobbling. And as a result, my fret slots ended up being way too big. They would not hold the fret tang. So I ended up buying this very specialized tool. I mean, there's nothing else it's used for, where you crimp the fret tang, and by crimping it, you're kind of expanding how it grips.
Yeah.
So then, on my massive fret slots that I foolishly sawed into my fretboard, having crimped the fret tang, I was then able to make it sit and stay. So that was a crucial mistake that I learned from it. And since then, what I do is I'll use a block of wood that I've made sure is perfectly square, like right angles.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll use that as a guide. So I'll put up my fret saw against one side of that at the exact right spot, which I've drawn onto my fretboard. And then I'll very carefully saw it so I keep a right angle and I'm not wobbling and making that slot wider. That's crucial. It's very easy to make it too wide, and then your fret won't seat properly.
Gotcha.
So it's the kind of thing, I feel like it's probably the most difficult job in the guitar build, is getting those frets in precisely accurately. If you're off by like 1/10 of a millimeter, you're going to hear it. Your intonation will never be right.
Wow.
And so you have to be super precise in your measurements, but also in your execution. And that just takes experience. And I'm years away from being comfortable at that.
That's really stressful. Have you had any like neck fails that you had to essentially just trash the neck because of laying frets?
No, there was that big era I was just talking about where I wobbled when I was cutting the slots, but that I was able to recover from. So no, I haven't. I've trashed necks for other reasons, but not for fretting reasons yet.
Okay, cool. That video that you put of you laying the frets and hammering them in, I think that Queen was soundtracking the video. That was really interesting as well, because I just never seen that done. And I was like, wow, so many things can go wrong. If you're laying 24 frets in a guitar, that's 24 things in a row that can go seriously wrong, it seems like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ugh.
I'm getting better every time I do it. So far, knock on wood. So far it's been a pretty linear progression in my fret installations, but there's going to be dips. I'm going to make mistakes along the way. But
yeah,
so far it's been okay, I did that better than I did last time.
Nice.
And that's a nice feeling.
So something I noticed that you posted for your first build that you did is that you have what looks to be almost like an architect does a drawing and a design of a house before the construction crew takes it over and actually executes the build. So it looked like you drew out the entire guitar in a real to scale drawing, right? I'm wondering if you can talk about that drawing process, and if you do that for all of your guitars before you start them.
Yeah, I definitely do. Because so far every guitar I've made has been different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I draw it out, which is really fun. You start with your, and actually when I talk about this, I can go back to your question about fan frets, because it's all part of this design. So you start out with the center line, and then you need to figure out your scale length. Scale length is basically the length of your vibrating guitar string, which is essentially from the nut to the nominal bridge position. Mm-hmm. And there's some standard scale lengths. Gibson usually uses something around 24 3/4 inches. Fender is 25.5 inches. PRS is 25 inches. So I've experimented with all three. And so you kind of draw a perpendicular line on your center line to show where the nut is and where your bridge is. And that's just that's where you design your guitar around. Now, if you're going to have, you asked about fan frets. What fan frets do, instead of having perpendicular frets along the center line, the frets kind of fan. So they're at an angle and they kind of sweep. And what that allows you to do is for your lower strings, you can have a longer scale length. And then your higher strings, you have a shorter scale length, which I did for my 7-string build because having 7 strings, I have an extra low string, which kind of needs the extra scale length to sound good. And also if I'm going to be drop tuning, if it's not a long scale length, you might get some pretty floppy strings. So I have that long scale length at the low strings and then a shorter scale length at the high strings, which means you have to fan those frets in order to have your intonation proper.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'm wondering about the selection of hardware, tuning pegs, bridge, fret inlays, etc. Like what is your thinking about like selecting the things that go onto the guitar once the woodwork is coming together?
Yeah, I don't do any inlay work. So I kind of like just a bare fretboard. I like the look of it. And also I'm not into decoration for the sake of decoration. For the most part, I kind of prefer like function determines form for the most part. I mean, we'll get into natural dyeing and then that's a decorative decision. It's not necessarily functional.
Yeah.
But for the most part, so I don't do any inlay work yet. I have no experience with that. Maybe one day I'll play with that. But as far as like hardware, so far I've kind of because so far I've only built guitars for me.
Yeah.
5 guitars for myself. So I know what I like. So I tend to buy locking tuners, Graph Tech, nuts. A lot of my guitars have Bigsby tremolos because I just really love the sound of a gentle tremolo sound.
Yeah.
Or if it's not tremolo, vibrato. God, I'm losing my terminology here. But now, like right now, I'm building a guitar for Chris, Propagandhi, my friend, and so those considerations pretty similar. We have a lot in common, but also some considerations that are more strictly his own aesthetic considerations and whatnot. And so that's been a nice learning experience to consider somebody else's preferences.
Right. Like can you as the builder listen to somebody else's tastes and requests and then accommodate that through an actual like follow through on a build? You know what I mean? Because I know that he's doing Evertune and that was something that you hadn't done before, right?
No, I have a guitar. It's my first SG that I talked about that I had the neck replaced. I ended up putting an Evertune in that. And Evertunes are great. They work really well, but you have to remove a lot of wood to install those. And for that reason alone, they're not my preference for my own self. I don't think I would ever build an Evertune guitar for myself again. But it's been a huge learning experience, learning how to install those because Chris really loves them. And they're very great. They do what they say. They stay in tune. I mean, my guitar with an Evertune, I had it in a case for years and took it out of the case and play it, and it's perfectly in tune. It's crazy.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Anyways, it's been a challenge because Evertune, they have really poor instructional videos for installers, just really awful. So I had to use every brain cell in my brain to figure out how the hell to do this, and I figured it out. Which has been a learning experience that I'm actually pretty grateful for. But holy man, you'd think they could spend a few bucks to make a video.
So since you brought up Chris, I'm wondering, like, how did you get the design of the body of the guitar down for his preferences? Because surely he told you some preferences that he had for the shape of the guitar, and I'm wondering how you went about accommodating that.
Yeah, we talked a lot, and we sort of designed it together. I would draw it and then I'd send him a picture. And I borrowed a few of his guitars that he really loves. For example, he has this Flying V that he loves because he likes the way it sits. It kind of sits out and away from his body in a way that I personally can't stand. I think it's, he's a taller, longer person with longer arms, whereas I'm a kind of squat, short guy. So I prefer my guitars kind of into my body. And he likes it kind of out. And also as a singer who's playing these crazy guitar parts, having it out and away from his body allows he can see what he's playing a bit easier. so that was a consideration. So we had a couple of designs we were working on. One was sort of like almost like an Ibanez Destroyer sort of vibe, which I was kind of getting excited about a little bit, because it's not something I would have personally wanted to do for myself.
Yeah.
And another design that was more in the vein of like Ibanez, I think they're called RG, just basically like a shredder style guitar, which we ended up going with that style. And he sent me tips. He'd be like make it more aggressive. And I'd be like, what does that mean? You want a pointier? And then he was like, yeah, maybe. So there's a lot of back and forth like that. And finally ended up on a design that I liked a lot, and that also he seemed to like a lot as well. And so I've been working on that for the last few months now.
Amazing. Well, I saw a couple of the pictures that you did. So if people want to check out that guitar you're building for Chris, you can see some preliminary cutouts and things like that on your Instagram. So, but I know that everybody's really excited about that too. So that'll be really cool to see.
Maybe I'll mention, this is my tentative plan. I'm building 2 guitars right now.
Yeah.
And both are the same design, design that Chris and I worked on, using different woods. Because I'm really curious, selfishly, Chris has a really tuned in ear. He hears things that I do not hear.
Yeah.
So I'm just really curious. I want to build these 2 guitars using different woods, but otherwise they're virtually the same, and just get him to play both and get some notes from him. What does he notice the difference? And I'm trying to figure out what can I attribute to the wood choice? Because in an electric guitar, unlike an acoustic guitar, the wood choice is only one small variable in a long list of variables that can affect your tone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just really interested in how much the variable of wood's choice affects the tone.
Amazing.
So I want him to try both, and then, figure out which one he might like better. And the idea I have is I might, if there's any interest, maybe auction the other one, just to recoup my costs, because that's kind of where I'm at now. I want to keep building, but it's expensive. And if I can at least recoup the cost of building, I can keep building. And then if there's anything extra, then I donate it to a local cause of some kind.
Well, everybody, that would be amazing. I think that a lot of people listening would be really interested to see that end result come out of there. So you should definitely consider doing that. It's
considering doing it. It all depends on whether or not I'm happy with how it turns out.
Right. Exactly. You don't want to send something out there into the world that you're not feeling great about, because that is a part of your body of work that will remain in the world forever, and then people will talk about it. So you want to make sure that if you do send something out there in the world, that it's something that you would stand behind pretty much no matter what.
Yeah, but I know it's the best that I'm able to do right now.
Yeah. I do. Earlier, you brought up natural dyes to color your builds, and I'm curious about how I saw on your Instagram, I saw some acorn dye, some marigold dye, and I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit about that, because it's so fascinating. And the baths that you make of the marigold flowers, I mean, this is such a cool looking process, and I'm just wondering if you can just describe it a little.
It is a cool process, and I owe my partner Mandy for turning me on to this. She's been into natural dyeing fabrics for a few years now, and I've just kind of witnessed this process, and I've watched her turn cotton garments or linen garments or whatever into these beautiful items of clothing that have this natural pigment to them. And so we kind of just thought together, we kind of wondered when you're dyeing fabric, there's 2 kinds of fabric really. There's protein fibers, which would be like wool. Mm-hmm. And then there's cellulose fibers, which is linen and cotton and basically plants. And wood is a plant. So we wondered, I wonder if maybe there's a way to use natural dye on wood. So I wasn't able to find really much in the way of resources out there, mm-hmm. other than people that are using natural dyes to dye small beads. Which isn't useful for me, because with those small wooden beads, you just immerse them in a dye bath. I'm not going to put my guitar that I just built in a bucket of liquid. I'm just mm-hmm. That's not an option. So I've just kind of experimented with different ways to apply the dye, and so far so good. And I can go into that a little bit if you'd like. Yes,
please do. You might as well. We're only going to have this conversation one time. You know what I mean?
So so I'm new to this, of course. I'll caveat. But so with dyeing the the first step is you need to, one of the first steps is you need to mordant the fabric. And what that is a process basically where you boil the fabric for a while with some kind of a mordant, which is basically a fixative. The one I've been using is alum acetate. And what that does on a molecular level is it basically prepares the fibers to receive and bond with pigment in a way that will last.
Yeah.
Because otherwise that pigment will just fade away pretty quick.
Yeah.
So it's like on a molecular level, you have to kind of set those fibers up so that they can bond to the pigment. So on the guitars, what I've just been doing is a few different things. What I've done is I'm not going to boil my guitar body in water with this alum acetate. I'm not going to do that. So I just decided to try mixing the natural dye, which is made by basically throwing in flowers or whatever you're using, and boil it down. And for me, I boil it down really far, so I almost get like a syrup.
Yeah.
I've used marigolds, I've used acorns, Tango Cosmos, Dyer's Coreopsis, number of different flowers. Most of them we just grow in our front yard.
Amazing.
Very satisfying, as you can imagine.
So cool.
So once you get that sort of syrupy, reduced dye from whatever flower or whatever it is you're using. Oh, I've also used bark. Mm-hmm. I mix that with an amount of alum acetate and kind of mix it up. And that seems to work quite well. I just apply that to the wood in a number of coats and it bonds. I've got a guitar. My first one I did it on was my build number 3, which is sort of a Telecaster style guitar.
That one's one of my, I think that one's super cool. I really like build 3.
That one is actually, that was reclaimed wood. So that body is made out of very old Douglas fir, which a friend of mine, there was an old army barracks in a town called Verdon nearby in Manitoba here. That wood, the barracks was built 100 years ago, got demolished. I got some of that wood. So I built a guitar out of that. And then I dyed it using Dyer's Coreopsis. And a year later, it's still there. It hasn't faded. It does fade where I play, like where my body rests on it, because I don't like using lacquer. I don't think I ever will. I prefer using a much more natural finish. The one I've been currently using is like basically a natural varnish. It's linseed oil and basically like spruce sap, which looks great. It's relatively durable, but it will fade. These guitars will show their use. And if there's any dye underneath, it will kind of fade. And I'm okay with that. I love that a guitar, can show its use, and it's not just some pristine thing encased or embalmed in some crazy toxic sealant. I'm not interested in that. So I know in the future, if anyone's ever interested in my guitars and my builds, they should know that this guitar will show its use, and it's not going to stay pristine and perfect. It will dent if you bang it against something.
All right. Well, I want to talk a little bit about each of your builds, but not like we've talked about so much already that I just want to know a little bit about something that you like and enjoy reflecting on each one of these builds. You know what I mean? So your first one is the SG style, and everybody can see a photo of it on your Instagram. And you've talked a little bit about that one. And I'm curious if you can just reflect on that build a little bit and say what you like about that process and that particular guitar.
Well, what I like is that I really committed to the process of learning and building and making mistakes and not giving up. And I'm proud that it succeeded. It was a guitar that in my band Agassiz, I played that guitar for many, many months until I built my next guitar. I tend to play whatever guitar is the most recent, but it works. And so I'm proud of that. I love the black walnut as a wood to use. It's a domestic wood. It grows in Eastern North America. And it's just beautiful. And I love just the way it looks. So yeah, that was the one that kind of got it all started for me.
Which guitars? So you have 5 builds that were done.
Yeah.
Which ones appear on the new Agassiz EP?
So I play on every single song. My main number 1 guitar is my build number 5, my most recent. It's the 7-string multi-scale guitar.
Okay.
That's sort of the main guitar in every single song. There's a few songs, the whole album is double-tracked guitars, we haven't really done that before. and I like the way it sounds. It just makes it sound. It's more guitar heavy.
Yeah.
And I mostly used the 7-string to double up the guitars, except on 2 songs. Human Trials, the second guitar, I used my build number 4 because it is the Bigsby unit. And that one I really wanted to have that effect of sort of like some falling chords. It really worked in that song. And also, I also used that guitar, the one with the Bigsby build number 4 in White Throat, because there's this area on all my guitars that have a Bigsby, there's an area behind the bridge where the string kind of continues. And if you can create these really cool plinky sounds. And if you listen to White Throat, there's lots of little plinky sounds all over the place. And that's coming from that guitar. And I also use it to double track as well.
Awesome. Let's hear a clip from Human Trials really quick. So this is guitar number 4, build number 4 on Human Trials from the new Agassiz EP, Pulse 1C. All right, now let's hear a little bit from White Throat from Agassiz Pulse 1C as well. Nice. What did you like about that process of building guitar number 4 that appears on the Agassiz EP?
Well, after I built my first guitar, which was basically just a knockoff of a Gibson SG,
sure,
I got more interested in designing my own body shapes. And build number 4, I'm quite happy with that body shape. There's a few things I'd probably change, and I mean, this is the process, right? I'm always going to be changing, I think, and aesthetic considerations change as well. But I'm really quite happy with the way that body shape turned out, and I kind of got lucky with that. So the body is made out of 2 pieces of wood. The bottom part is black walnut, and I chambered it a little bit, meaning I basically routed out a few holes, and then I glued on that top layer, which is spalted maple. Spalted means that if you let a piece of wood start to rot a little bit, and the bacteria and the fungus start doing their thing, but then you stop that rotting process at a very specific time by putting the wood in a kiln, which basically gently heats it up and starts drying it out. You end up with these really cool inky lines. That kind of look cool. And this particular spalting pattern on this piece of wood I really, really loved. And it's also torrefied. Torrefied basically means roasted in a vacuum where there's no oxygen. So it kind of makes the wood a bit darker, like dark brown. And I just really love the look of that. I'm not a fan of working with spalted wood in general because it gets very punky, meaning it's very soft because it started to rot. So you're dealing with partially rotted wood, and it's just that's why I don't like my second build very much, because that's also, the top is spalted, and it's just, there's a lot of soft spots, and to me it just looks like garish and kind of gaudy in a way that just doesn't feel authentic to my own, to like where I'm heading.
Do you, because I know that you were very public on your Instagram about not liking that second build, and I'm wondering, do you ever play that thing, or does it just kind of sit there like taunting you from the corner?
I have it in a case. I haven't played it recently, but there was a time when that was my most recent build that's all I ever played at band practice. It's a weird guitar because it's like a semi-hollow, so I routed out quite a bit of material in the body before I glued on the top. So it's largely hollow, and it's like, it sounds really cool. On that guitar, I built a very thick neck. I just wanted to experiment with like, how thick can I make a neck?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a baseball bat, and it's really quite comfortable. Even though I've got small hands, it's really quite comfortable. I was surprised how much I liked it. And I also put in Jazzmaster pickups, which is, I mean, in the world of guitars, there's a lot of traditionalists. I think many, if not most, people that are into guitars are into, like, there's a sort of a, maybe I'm being unfair in saying this, but like there's certain guitars and you don't mess with them. There's like a Les Paul, don't mess with it, and so on. And so there's a style of guitar that Fender makes called the Jazzmaster with specific pickups, which I just love the sound of Jazzmaster pickups. One of my favorite pickups. But I'm not a big fan of that Jazzmaster shape. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to build a semi-hollow guitar. I'm going to throw these Jazzmaster pickups in there. That a local luthier, Al Beardsell, made. He's made me a few pickups, actually. And so anyways, I really like the sound of the guitar. I just, I don't like the way it looks. I think there's some aspects of my carving that just looks really sloppy to me. But I mean, I still love it. And I probably will return to it and play it again someday.
I love it. Well, let's talk about the 7-string. This is the only 7-string you've built. I believe you said this is the primary guitar on the new Agassiz EP, Pulse 1C. And I'm wondering if you can just tell me about, the process of deciding, like learning how to build a 7-string, what differences there are in the build style and the process that went into it. And then just tell me a little bit about like what you like about the guitar.
Yeah, I really got into the idea of having like an extended range guitar because I had been listening to a lot of Animals as Leaders. They're like an instrumental metal band. And then one of the guys in that band has a side project called Mestis, who I really quite like. And I was really into like about a year and a half ago. And I just thought, I just really want one. Like, I'm not going to, because they play 8-string guitars, and I'm not going to go that far. So I thought, okay, I'm going to build a 7-string guitar. Yeah. You never know. So I built this 7-string guitar, and I wanted to make it multi-scale, like we had already discussed. And I kind of messed around with body shapes. I was really Tosin Abasi. He's another one of the guitar players in Animals as Leaders, and he has his own guitar company where he's got this really cool, very modern-looking guitar body that I was kind of inspired by. And so I kind of came up with a design that was kind of riffing off of what he came up with for his design. And I just, I'm really happy with that guitar, and I really love having that extra string. I've also been kind of really focusing on playing more with my fingers instead of using a pick. Growing my fingernails out long and everything, just to make it happen. I've been doing that for about a year now, and it's just really fun. It's making me write riffs and songs in a new, different kind of way. And the songs we recorded for Pulse 1C, those were all written on a 6-string, but I really wanted to use this 7-string on that recording. So there's a few times where I found a way to use that extra low 7th string just to throw it in there, some tasty little low notes. And the stuff that I'm writing now, and we're writing together as a band, will probably, like, a lot of it's going to be written on 7-string guitars. So I'm just excited to, it's always, you get in ruts, especially once you get into your 40s. Yeah. You get into ruts and you're just like, oh man, I'm just so bored with myself, and finding new ways to just change things up, go at things from a different angle. It's it keeps things interesting.
That loops right back to the very beginning of this entire conversation about not stagnating as a human being. You know what I mean? Continuing to learn forever. Is there a section of Pulse 1C that you feel that the 7-string really stands out?
Let me think. I use that low string very sparingly, but Dispatches from the Numinous Frontier, there's certainly a section in that song, I'm going to say midway through. That's probably about as specific as I can get, where if you listen carefully, you can hear me go pretty low.
Awesome. What are you, what are some of your goals that you have for future builds and things like that? What are you striving for?
All I know for certain is I love building and I don't want to stop. I think I've exhausted building guitars for myself. So at this point, I'm hesitant to I don't have the pretense of calling myself a luthier. I've got so much more learning to do. That said, I've been playing guitar for 20 more years or whatever it's been. And the guitars I've built work and they feel good to me. So I feel like I'm at least pretty good at it, and I'm on my way to getting better, at the risk of sounding arrogant. But I feel like I love doing it and I want to be great at it, but I'm also hesitant to rush into forming a business out of it, because I don't want it to become something where I'm all of a sudden trying to scramble to meet deadlines or make a living from it. It would be awesome to do that. I'd love to just do this all day, every day. That's what I want. That's what I've realized I want to do. As much as teaching is gratifying, this is more gratifying to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. On a selfish, personal level. I think teaching, I've got more work to do, because I value the opportunity I get to try to make a difference in some small way. And I don't know if I can do that with guitar building. And so it feels like teaching keeps me out in the world, as someone who very much is prone to isolating himself and, isolating himself from the world. Teaching keeps me out in the world in a really important and healthy way for me. Crazy tangent there, sorry. But anyways, that's a long story for me to just say, I'm not sure where this is headed, but I know I'm not done building. And I think my next step is just to build for other people. But like I say, I'm very cautious in how I'm going to move forward with that, because the last thing I want is for this just to become a job that I'm not enjoying.
Awesome. Well,
and I don't want to compromise I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't want to compromise also my commitment to trying to be gentle in the way that I live on the earth with this building. If I have to compromise that for the sake of running a guitar business, then I think that it's game over.
Amazing. Well, I have learned a tremendous amount in this past hour, and thank you for allowing me to punish you relentlessly with my questions.
Well, I feel like it's the other way around. I feel like I've punished you and your listeners.
No.
For your own interest, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Not at all. And, this has been just so fantastically interesting to watch a person describe something that they love. And to me, that is the purpose of what I seek to do every single day in my life, whether it's in my classroom, my friendships, with my own child, on the podcast that I do, is just hearing people's stories about what inspires them. That's what this is all about for me. So I'm just so grateful to you for your time on your summer vacation when you could be building, and instead you're sitting here talking to me. It just makes me just so happy. So thank you so much for spending this time with me today.
Well, thank you. It was a lot of fun. I could talk about this stuff for hours and hours. So thanks.
And what is the Instagram that you want to point people towards?
Yeah, so I started a new Instagram page, Strange Earth Guitars, and that's where I'm trying to post, what I'm working on, what I'm learning, and different things like that.
Anybody out there who follows the Propagandhi Pod Instagram page will see that I put your builds in my stories as often as I can. So definitely be on the lookout for that, and definitely follow Strange Earth Guitars on Instagram. And I think, David, that what we should do to close this thing out is I think that we should play a little bit of Dispatches from the Numinous Frontier. What do you think?
That sounds good.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. Thank you, David Guillas. And here is from the new EP, Pulse 1C from Winnipeg's Agassiz, Dispatches from the Numinous Frontier.